Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at a combination of weapons that have been getting a lot of attention recently. Gigasthiccus as well as Lost have been talking about this combination, and it's really powerful for delivering a couple different true combos as well as some pseudo combos, and it's really just a lot of fun to use the synergy with these two weapons together, and that's going to be the Zwiehander as well as a Curved Greatsword. In this case, I'll be using a Bloodhound Fang as well as lightning grease, and I've also got my physic to boost that lightning power just a little bit, and then we have lightning slash on our Zwiehander. We can eat some exalted flesh, and then altogether this boosts our AR for our right-handed weapon to 1053 and then our left-handed weapon up to 958. So together with a true combo that looks like just a poke followed up by a slash, that's quite a bit of damage. We will also have access to kind of a pseudo combo here where we go for a poke, and then if we land lightning slash as an Ash of War, then that true combos with a slash from the Curved Greatsword. So together this can just deliver so much damage. In some duels you'll see me removing the Shard of Alexander just so I'd be able to test whether or not the true combo after the lightning slash and the Curved Greatsword works, because typically the lightning slash would just kill my opponent before I'd be able to even go for the Curved Greatsword attack. So really just a ton of damage here. You could boost it even further with something like the Jellyfish Shield, but this is just kind of absurd already. It's pretty interesting in invasions, but I wouldn't really recommend it in duels just because to me it feels like kind of a overpowered setup to run. You know, if you land a poke and they roll towards you, so you land this Ash of War, you basically kill your opponent immediately, and that's just not really my playstyle when it comes to duels, but this was getting so much attention I wanted to give it a try. So that's the kind of long-winded explanation of what this setup looks like. I also wanted to mention that I experimented with several different Ashes of War, so I used Lightning Slash, obviously, Troll's Roar a little bit, as well as Lightning Ram and Lion's Claw. Lost also gave Storm Stomp a try to pretty great effect, so I'll link his video below, as well as Gigasthiccus's, which was kind of the inspiration for using Lightning Slash. And I also just wanted to mention, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd definitely appreciate it. But that's all I've got to say, so let's go ahead and check out the Invasions and Duel Showcase. Alright, so jumping into our first invasion, we have what starts as a 2v1, although a blue will be joining us a little bit later on. So we start off with a couple shots from the Great Bow, just to get some chip damage on this player, who will eventually be running a bow build. And we move forward a little bit and just have some time to buff, and then run in and start going after this Phantom with the bow. And here we're able to just catch our host opponent with the Curved Greatsword attack, and then deliver that true combo with the poke from the Zwiehander, followed up by a slash from the Curved Greatsword, and that's enough to just take care of our Phantom with half health. So you can see just how much damage that does. And then here we deliver that same combo against the host, who is Rune Arc, so they've got a little bit more HP, and that does over 1100 damage. So, you know, quite substantial. But at this point, the blue has come in. They're running a Ultra Greatsword setup with some Bloodhound steps, so we're going to need to be worried about that. And we also are poisoned with the inability to heal due to the winged scythe, but that's not too much of an issue. We're able to get our true combo off and hit both players simultaneously and come out with the W. And we do have the guy with the torch come in and just kind of celebrate with us, so that was kind of nice. Next up, we have a 2v1 in kind of a small area, and the Phantom here is going to be going for a lot of Wild Strikes attacks with their Great Stars, which is a potentially good way to get some HP back, since you do get a 1% HP increase every time you land a hit with the Great Stars. However, we are pretty aware of kind of their strategy, and we're able to stun lock them out of their attack in some instances. So here we can see just how much damage the Lightning Slash attack does. You know, we didn't even hit them with a true combo, it did, you know, 1400 damage. So they're potentially running some Soar Seals or something that is lowering their damage negation, but it's quite high is kind of the moral of the story when it comes to Lightning Slash, and the fact that you can often combo that out of a just regular poke from the Zwiehander just makes it very, very powerful. Now, there are a couple instances where the Lightning Slash combo does not work. So if your opponent is using a Greatsword, I've found if they attack right out of stun, they'll be able to stun you out of your Lightning Slash animation. So it's a two-part animation where you go for the first part, and that kind of delivers an initial small damage, and then you go for the kind of slam down, and that will deliver the rest of the damage. So here we do get a nice backstab, but basically what I'm saying is the true combo of the poke to slash with the greatsword is going to be much more reliable than the kind of pseudo combo of the poke to lightning slash, because there are ways for your opponent to avoid the lightning slash damage, especially if they roll away from you or if they attack out of stun from the initial part. So this next invasion is a 3v1, and we have quite a bit of damage being delivered from this Phantom with the scythes. We were able to turn it into a 2v1 pretty quickly, so I was happy about that, but the host is definitely more skilled than maybe some of your average hosts. They're running the Claymore, which, you know, sometimes is an indication that they're just a new player that have no idea what they're doing, or it's an indication that they're a pretty skilled player that knows the fundamentals pretty well. And we can see just from their usage of Ashes of War, they're using Impaling Thrust, which is a great kind of Ash of War that you can use on the Claymore. It really just kind of synergizes well with the moveset of the Claymore, especially with the crouch pokes or the heavy pokes. So they definitely know what they're doing. The Phantom with the dual scythe is a little bit less of a threat in terms of skill level. They're being pretty aggressive and just kind of swinging kind of wildly, but they are doing quite a bit of damage. So we need to be conscientious of that, but we can also use it to our advantage. So we kind of need to back off and heal a number of times, and that's kind of the approach that I found to be common with this particular setup, where you have the potential to just do a ton of damage in invasions all at once, but it does take time and leaves you open to getting stunned from another player in an invasion. So this setup is going to be extremely strong in duels, but the fact that you need extra time to kind of deliver all your different hits and that you can be stunned in any kind of portion of that combination or process is what makes this a little bit harder to run in invasions. And I found that having, you know, the option to switch to the two-handed moveset for the Curved Greatsword like the Bloodhound Fang was actually more beneficial in some scenarios, because you'd be able to, instead of go for this poke, which is kind of the initial step in the combo you're frequently going for, you'd have access to a slash attack which could stun multiple opponents at the same time and just kind of relieve some pressure. So here we can see now that it's a one-on-one, we can go for our combos a little bit more successfully, and here we get the poke to slash combo and then follow it up with lightning ram, and we can just see how much pressure that applies. So if you are going to be going for that, you do want to make sure you have a lot of FP and a lot of stamina, just because lightning ram will burn through all that pretty fast, and it's most effective when you can just keep spamming the Ash of War and keep that roll going. And kind of the biggest issue when it comes to lightning ram is the fact that you run out of stamina or run out of FP before you can really catch up to your opponent and start delivering those multiple hits in a row. This next invasion, we're going to be using the stairs in the hallway quite a bit to kind of isolate the amount of pressure that can come in simultaneously. We also are running Troll's Roar, at least at the beginning here, and then we swap that off after delivering a hit. I think Troll's Roar is best used as a surprise kind of Ash of War, and it's not super easy to land it consistently over and over again. It does have kind of a nice delay that can offer you a pretty good roll catch, but I find that, you know, landing it once is maybe the best you can hope for, and then you can switch over to something like Lightning Slash. So you can kind of see they're just running up the stairs, and I'm able to kind of punish their aggression as they come at me one by one, and having the kind of one after the other approach rather than them both simultaneously is definitely going to help me deliver my true combos more successfully. Here I'm able to land just the poke of the Zwiehander, and I was hoping to get that to be followed up by an attack with the Curved Greatsword. However, I was stunned by the host, so that's pretty common and kind of some of the issues that you can experience while going for these true combos. But, you know, having that Curved Greatsword as an offhand that you can just switch to as a roll catch or something, you know, you can see there it was really useful to kind of continue pressuring after landing the poke that did most of the Phantom's health. So it's just a good option to have on hand, and I definitely prefer it as a roll catch over the Zwiehander. So here we can see that true combo, and then we do land the Lightning Slash follow-up, and that's pretty solid. Obviously, they can roll out, they can roll away, and that will be a good way for them to get out of range of the Lightning Slash, but if they roll off to the side, oftentimes the range of the Zwiehander will be enough to just allow you to grab that hit and just do so much damage. So next up we have a 3v1, and this one got dragged out a little bit, so you'll note that we kind of skip forward a little bit later on. And the player with the Ultra Greatsword as well as the Great Shield was just fairly difficult to deal with, especially with the playstyle I go for, where I try to get all the Phantoms before the host. And when you have a player with the ability to just kind of turtle behind a Great Shield, it can be really hard to aggress. So really, I'm going to be hoping to get the Phantom without the Great Shield first, and they are also a little bit... They're playing it a little bit risky with their amount of HP. So they're at half health and they're still pressuring, which is just kind of a bold move. So I opt to go for the Bloodhound's Finesse as just kind of a surprise. I found that it, could oftentimes, if you land it while they're still attacking you, you can use the Hyper Armor to just deliver a lot of damage, and that's enough to take care of the first Phantom. So now begins the process where I'm kind of going after the player with the Great Shield while trying to avoid some of the incoming lightning attacks from the host. And it does get a little bit tiresome. Really just getting on the host, I think, may have been the right approach, but just it's my play style to go for the Phantom first. So we do try to find opportunities to take advantage of when the Phantom is in their recovery frames from these heavy attacks that they keep going for. They're playing pretty predictably. Here I opted to kind of back off. It seemed like I would be pressured from behind if I continued to pressure the Phantom, even though they were at low health. And then here we skipped forward a little bit. I've started using Sleep Pots just a little bit to kind of mix things up. I also go for Troll's Roar as a hope to guard break my opponent, but they do have enough stamina to kind of withstand that big Ash of War attack. This would not be a bad time to switch to the Talisman that does more guard breaking damage. So if you have that on hand, and I'm not sure if I did or not for this particular invasion, that would have been useful, but I switch over to the Stormhawk Axe, and that's a great way to deliver quite a bit of stamina damage to the player with the Great Shield and turn this into just a 1v1. And then here they're going for Lightning Ram, and they Lightning Ram right through the Sleep Pot. I'm able to land a fully charged heavy with the Stormhawk Axe and then switch over to the Zwiehander. I go for my true combo, but they decide to jump over the edge. So no true combos there for that particular player, but it was kind of a fun invasion and was kind of interesting to deal with the kind of nuisance of the Great Shield player. And then once the Great Shield player was gone, the host was not so interested in participating. So next up we have a 3v1, and here I've got a little bit of help from the PvE. They deliver a final blow on the Phantom that I'm able to get to low health after that true combo, and now we just need to worry about the host and the Phantom. And the Phantom is using the host rather is using Lightning Slash, which is kind of fun. Here I go for an attack and notice that my attack is pretty delayed and I'm not able to stun my opponent when I'd like to. So again, I switch over to the Stormhawk Axe and just try to bait them into a small area. And we can see just kind of some of the delay for the hits that are delivered with the Stormhawk Axe. So when things feel a little bit weird, when you have kind of a bad connection with your opponent, it's not a bad idea to mix things up into something with kind of a lingering hitbox. Don't try to suffer through just the, delayed stuns of your pokes with the Zwiehander while getting punished from hits from the Phantom or something. I think, going for something like Flaming Strike or the Stormhawk Axe, which has lingering hitboxes, or trying to get poison or something in the mix can just make your life quite a bit easier in those moments. And then there you can see we invade in a 2v2 and just are able to so quickly take care of the host and the Phantom. So just the power of this setup is pretty absurd, and it's interesting to play with. It feels a little bit glass cannon-y in my opinion. Not so much in the fact that you're super breakable, but you are going for a combo that has kind of a high risk, high reward. You can definitely get punished for going for this combo, especially in multi-opponent situations. It's less punishable in an easy capacity in duels or something, but really just kind of the amount of time it takes to deliver can be difficult. I didn't find I enjoyed running this setup in invasions as much as I kind of thought I would. I would probably prefer just running, a Curved Greatsword or a regular Greatsword setup. I feel like that has a little bit more just utility, and it's a little bit less one-dimensional, and that's kind of par for the course when you're running a build that's so heavily reliant on true combo or pseudo combo, where you know, it does end up being kind of one-dimensional. You are going for pokes in maybe certain situations where you might not normally go for it, and even though it does deliver a lot of damage when you land it, it feels, you know, it can get just a little stale after a little while, in my opinion, but it's worth giving a try. And I think, you know, if you're going for the true combo a little bit less and really just trying to figure out how these weapons work together, incorporating your offhand swings a little bit more often, you know, I think that is where this setup really shines. So having the true combo kind of in your back pocket as a high damage option is going to be great, but really utilizing the fact that you have an offhand sweeping attack is going to be a great approach. For this video, you'll see me spam the kind of poke more than I normally would just because that was the theme, but I found that in instances where I could really utilize the Bloodhound Fang or a Curved Greatsword in my offhand more, that was going to be a lot of fun. So here we do get the win with the Troll's Roar just as kind of a roll catch, and that was a successful 2v1 against players that were, you know, they had a lot of damage potential. Here we have a 3v1 and it kind of feels like a gank. I'm not 100% sure what the situation is going to be, and I don't feel like my setup is going to be great for this group of people. There's a lot of kind of longer ranged attacks they can go for. I see somebody's got the Blasphemous Blade. We've also got lightning attacks coming in. So I would like to quickly kind of slim down the player count here. So we do have kind of the classic Stormhawk Axe turn and burn, which is really successful for eliminating 2 phantoms at once. And we're able to kind of switch things up to the Zwiehander. You will also see me switch over to a unleveled Zwiehander at some point. So here I do switch over to one that's not plus 25, it's just plus 0. And that was just to make sure that I could land the combos consistently without killing my opponent, and just kind of check whether or not the lightning slash true comboed into the Curved Greatsword slash. So you'll notice that we don't get the Curved Greatsword slash to connect, and that's because my opponent didn't roll in between the initial poke and the Ash of War, and that means that the amount of time they had before they could roll was adjusted. So you'll notice that if you get hit once and then you get hit again, you'll be able to roll out more quickly than if you were just hit once. And so that's kind of expected, so you don't get stun locked continuously. But in that case, it worked to this player's advantage because they weren't able to get hit by the Curved Greatsword since they hadn't rolled initially and kind of reset that timer. So they got hit twice in a row, which meant they could roll out a little bit more quickly. So that was just kind of a long explanation there. We switch over to a heavy thrusting sword and do get the W with the just kind of true combo. Next up, we have the duel portion of the showcase, and these are going to be pretty short duels. As I mentioned in the intro, I don't really love using a setup like this for duels because it really just punishes players immediately for one mistake. So here you can see that I switch off the Shard of Alexander just so I can get a better idea about this combo to see how true it is, and I didn't want to kill my opponent with the lightning slash. And you know, there it is, the true combo with the Curved Greatsword after the lightning slash, just delivering so much damage. And yeah, I guess I just kind of felt a little bit bad about this particular setup because of how punishing it was for a single mistake. And it's mostly just like I wouldn't love to play against this setup, so I prefer not to really run these types of things, but I was very curious about it. Combo gaming, I think, is not my favorite for a game that has so much damage potential. If damage was a little bit lower here, I think this would be kind of more interesting and I might incorporate it more, but like, you know, it's just one mistake and my opponent's done. So if you're looking for something that's kind of overpowered and just, you know, a little bit high risk but tons of reward, this is going to be a great setup for you. If you're looking to kind of up your skills and really get better at PvP in general, learn the fundamentals more precisely, then I wouldn't really recommend this setup if you're going to be only going for the true combo. I think this has a lot of interesting synergy in general, as I've mentioned before, where, you know, the fact that you have access to slash attacks is going to be pretty interesting, but there's not a ton of things to learn when you have just kind of 3 buttons you need to hit in a row, and if you land the first one, all 3 connect and you win the fight. So I really recommend kind of switching things up. This is maybe a little bit informative in terms of when you can go for poke attacks. I don't recommend just kind of spamming them out of roll all the time, but here, you know, is kind of a poor example where I do just kind of roll, get the poke. It comes out quite fast after some of the recent patches, so I am able to land that true combo. I was also able to trade sometimes, so the poise damage that is delivered by the poke can really be quite substantial in the fact that you get a little bit of hyper armor. So here we can just see I'm able to trade into their attacks with the dual spears and get all 3 hits to connect. Not too much to note there. So I would be open to potentially seeing this patched out. This combo feels a little bit unfair. It's a little bit, I would say it feels a lot stronger than the true combo that existed on the Cestus, and I would probably prefer to see that come back and for this to go away. It's just like, you know, it's almost kind of silly, especially with something like Lightning Slash, which just does so much damage. Being able to true combo into a Curved Greatsword, it's absurd. Also, if you watch Gigasthiccus video, it's true combos into Placidusax Ruin, which is even more high damage in most cases than the Curved Greatsword, so it's just a lot of true combo potential. I haven't really said anything that useful about these particular duels. I'm not sure there's that much useful things to say about them just with this particular setup, but I hope you enjoyed this kind of rant about how I feel about true combos, and just, I don't know, take it all with a grain of salt. It's just one gamer's opinion about this all, but, you know, we are finally able to just land a hit with the nice Curved Greatsword and come out on top for the final duel of the showcase. If you made it this far, I just wanted to say thanks so much for watching. I also did want to jump into a more detailed explanation of the build. So we are going to be running a +25 lightning infused Zwiehander and just a +10 Bloodhound Fang. We'll also use the Eccentric's Hood, Crucible Tree Armor, Raging Wolf Gauntlets, and Tree Sentinel Greaves. This gets us to 88 poise with the Bullgoat Talisman, which is over 84. I find 84 to be a pretty good breakpoint since that's the heavy thrusting sword poise breakpoint, so that can be pretty nice to have on hand. And then Shard of Alexander, Crimson Amber Medallion +2, and Great Jar's Arsenal. And then there are the additional stats here if you're interested. As mentioned, we'll be further boosting our lightning damage with the Lightning Shrouding Crack tier, and then we'll boost our HP when we're close to death with the Crimson Bubble tier. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have any build suggestions you'd like to see, I'm always happy to take a look at those. And that's pretty much all I've got. I hope you have a good one, and thanks so much for watching.